We are live. What is up, everybody? Chris Dell here, joined by Mr. Mackenzie Rivers, here to talk all things player prop betting for Super Bowl LX, the big game, however you want to call it. Mackenzie, I think, are we allowed to say Super Bowl LX, or are we going to get sued now from the NFL?
I remember when I worked very briefly at Circus Sports, they would have the printed out sheets that said big game props. I remember someone saying if it's printed, it can't say Super Bowl 60, but audio, we're just journalists. We're just describing. I mean, we're not Don Lemon. We're not going to get arrested. We're just saying what the facts are, and I'm pretty sure that's still okay.
Okay, well, I'll take your word for it for now. How are we doing today, Mackenzie? We're about a little less than 10 days away from the Super Bowl. How you feeling, man?
I'm feeling very well. This is Super Bowl I'm going to be heading to. It's my first radio row. So if you're there, come say hello. I'll be there with Better Day, with Scott Seidenberg, shaking hands and kissing babies, whatever I got to do. And it's in my home. It's not my hometown, but it's where some of my family lives in San Francisco. So I'll get to see my mom and maybe my uncle too, or cousin. Probably not. They're busy, but I will get to see my mom out there, and it's going to be great. I can't remember a Super Bowl where I didn't have like an emotional stake. Like the 49ers, obviously that's my team. Care a lot about that when winning or losing. And then when it was just the Chiefs, I always wanted to see Patrick Mahomes get another ring. Big fan of his, or Tom Brady. I was a big fan of his. Wanted them to get over the finish line. Here, it's just the facts, just the non-biased numbers on the page. And I do think they tell a pretty compelling story about what's going to happen that I'm not sure is reflected in the market. So a lot of opportunity here.
Yeah, while I try to get these tech issues out of the way here of sharing our screen, just want to make sure that's popping up correctly. Okay, I've got the DraftKings tab up for now. Just looking at DraftKings for simplicity for screen sharing here, we're going to go through our list of favorite props for the game, talk about some just overall game script betting strategies that Mackenzie's thinking based on some historical trends, etc. I've got 4 best bets specifically that I want to talk about. These are bets I gave out in our Betting Predators Discord channel for our NFL Premium Prop subscribers. I haven't looked to see if these lines have moved in my favor or against me since I gave them out earlier this week. I think it was like Monday night or Tuesday I did them. I just I couldn't deal with the thought of having no football for an entire weekend because it's been so long since we've had that. So I was like, I got to start grinding some fantasy football, some DFS, some player props, etc. But hey, we're going to look at the lines as it is right now, Friday, January 30th here, 6:10 p.m. Eastern time. Mackenzie coming live from the West Coast out in Vegas. Looking at here, Seahawks 4.5-point favorites, over under 45.5. Seahawks are big time money line favorites, minus 230. Patriots are plus 190 to win here at DraftKings. We'll go position by position and talk our ideas on some of these prop angles, but kind of just wanted to get the macro sense from you, Mackenzie, of like what you've been looking at. You bet a lot of sides and totals. You're really into betting systems, trends, historical data. Just kind of walk me through what you're thinking about this game. And I know you mentioned you want to talk about things from a game script angle. I also kind of want to like secondarily ask you, like, is it beneficial to do that, or should we not try to corner ourselves into a game script specific betting strategy unless we have just a super strong take on it? I kind of wanted to get your thoughts overall on that.
My answer to that question, or those back-to-back yes and no questions, is yes and yes. Yes, I think it's beneficial to think about what you think is going to happen in a game, play out the script, and think of all of the derivative props that are going to result from that. And yes, we should be very, very wary of pigeoning ourselves into a corner. You guys probably know the great Steve Fezzik. He kind of schooled me for the last 6 years since I've been working from him in 2019 about Super Bowl bets. And I think a great kind of microcosm of his thinking and a good way to think about it is parlay cards. Parlay are terrible bets. Often they are, often they're not. Because although each of those, like a Super Bowl parlay cards will be like, how many first downs are going to be? How many third downs or conversions are there going to be? Is the game going to go over or under? Who's going to win? All those are on one card. And individually, they're fair bets, minus 110. You don't have an edge. They priced it accordingly. But collectively, they often work together. So we would fill out parlay cards, not saying, I know what's going to happen. Here are the 8 bets that are going to happen, and we're going to go 8-0. But we're saying if there's more first downs, if there's more passing yards than expected, if there's a longest completion, we like the over. And the book is not adjusting for that. So you're able to find game scripts that work for you and have a portfolio of bets that all might go in line to what you're thinking. However, you might be wrong. I might be wrong. Maybe the Seahawks don't blow them out, like I think is a very real possibility. But there are a lot of bets that if the Seahawks blow them out, I love the bet. And if it's a closer game or if the Patriots win, the bet could still hit because it has internal merit, even though it kind of paints a picture with a lot of these other bets that I'm going to have. So I don't think you pigeonhole yourself. You're not certain of anything. Nothing's guaranteed. But I think you can build on different plays that work together if you think you have a good sense of what might happen.
Now, you're saying about the Seahawks possibly winning in a blowout. You're saying, are you betting all your prop angles? Are you basing them off of that premise and that possible game script here for this matchup?
I like the bet to be workable without it, but I definitely landed on the bet with the idea of I think this is more likely than not. And maybe not a blowout, but I like the Seahawks to cover 52%, 53%. So that means the Patriots are probably going to be trailing. And the Seahawks are going to be ahead. And it's not as simple as, bet all the overs on receivers for the Patriots, although I like some, and bet bet the rushing yards for the under. But I do think, given what they're good at, what they excel at, Patriots rush defense, for example, I think there's a lot of bets that are 50-50 if the Seahawks don't win or if it's not the game script that I think. And then 80-20 if it's the game script that I expect. You average it out and you have a profitable bet there, maybe a 60% bet, hopefully.
What do you think just matchup-wise here? We'll get into the more prop-specific angles, position by position here in a minute. What makes you like the Seahawks? Is it just the strength of schedule? Is it the defense? Is it the Patriots a little bit overrated? What are you seeing on your end other than just the 4.5-point spread?
I think it's the offense. We talked all year about the Rams were the best team in the league, and they had been. And why was that? They didn't have a top 5 defense. But the most consistent thing in football predictions is how do you pass the ball when you need to pass it, and how do you stop the pass when you need to stop it? And the Seahawks excel at both of those things. And Sam Darnold turning into a pumpkin was a worry of mine for much of the season, as recently as a couple weeks ago. I think he's turned the corner where he doesn't need to be Superman, but he can match the MVP like he did last week. And Matthew Stafford throw for throw because they have so many advantages. Teams are allowing him to have one-on-one matchups with the best receiver in football this year, JSN, and he's able to execute that. He's going to be playing in San Francisco, where he played for a season, where he's played 3 times this season, or 2 times this season. He played the Niners 3 times, but 2 times in San Francisco. I think everything sets up to be very comfortable. The Patriots, for all they do well defensively, as far as their secondary, stopping the run, they don't get a lot of pressure. And Sam Darnold, I think, is a top 10 quarterback, and I think he shows it here.
Yeah, I mean, I think with the Patriots, the thing I get stuck on a little bit here is how can we judge their defense? First month or 2 of the season, they were probably near number 1 in the league in their run defense. Then they lost Milton Williams. They lost Robert Spillane, and they were giving up a lot of production on the ground. Now, these 2 guys come back right at the end of the regular season. Now we've seen in 3 playoff games, the Patriots look, again, like one of the top run-defending units in the league. So I'm a little worried about the Seahawks having running success, like we saw Kenneth Walker have a little success, some big runs against the Rams in the conference championship.
Right.
We saw, obviously, the week before where they really just exposed a really bad 49ers run defense. So I think with the Patriots side of things, there's a couple things I'm looking at for the Seahawks offense where I think the Patriots run defense is here to stay, and I think they're legit. Yeah. I also think at the same time, not to get too far ahead because I want to talk about quarterbacks first, but I think at the same time, Zach Charbonnet going out, I think a lot of people are going to be wanting to bet Kenneth Walker props for this game.
Right.
He's the fourth highest favorite, or almost he's tied with Jackson Smith and Jigba on DraftKings for winning Super Bowl MVP. It's both quarterbacks, Darnold first, May 2nd, then JSN, or JSN at plus 550, Kenneth Walker at plus 650. So very close third and fourth there. The fourth favorite is Ramondre Stevenson. You got to go all the way to 25-1 for the fifth Super Bowl favorite there as well. So I think there's some interesting angles to exploit there. And before we get into quarterbacks, I wanted to ask you this, because this is something that is a very common topic of discussion for Super Bowl prop betting specifically, is when should you bet? Thought, the general consensus, I think, is like, and I probably used to think this more than I do now, is like, okay, if you're going to bet any overs, bet them right now. Bet them right away, because the public's going to drive them up, right? If you want to bet unders, wait until the end. But what I've seen, at least the last couple of years, is like certain unders you actually do need to bet early, because if the right type of the right type of website cohort gives out a pick and it's on an under, I think that under is going to stay down as opposed to the public driving it back up. So there are some unders that I bet already. Just kind of wanted to see your thoughts on the timing of things, under versus over, et cetera.
Yeah, last week, I know we're going to get into running backs, but talking about Kenneth Walker, I think it's a great example of, I really respect Clint Kubiak. I thought in New Orleans he was excellent, and he just, had Derek Carr be injured, and that was the end of their offensive viability. But last week, Kenneth Walker goes over his rushing prop in attempts, 19 attempts, but he only gets 63 yards. I think it's important for the Seahawks to stay on schedule. 49ers are often in this bucket where we don't seem that efficient, but the fact that we're able to get 2nd and 6 allows the playbook for Clint Kubiak to expand so much that they're able to perform. So I agree with the Patriots rush defense. I think Kenneth Walker might go under his rushing prop, and I still think the Seahawks roll. I mean, last week they beat the Rams by 4, but they really beat them by more than that, because they had a free touchdown gifted against them because of a penalty, the unsportsmanlike conduct. And then this happens a lot, which I don't think people recognize. They ended the game with a drive in the Rams territory. They were taking the ball from their own goal line all the way, and they maybe scored a touchdown, would have easily gotten a field goal, but they didn't have to. They took knees. So 31-27 on the board versus maybe the best team in football, the highest football by Neflo or a bunch of analytic websites. They really beat by like 10, 15, maybe even more, 10 points. So I think that was a huge data point. And the Patriots, opposite. They very much disappointed. I know they got the win with a blocked field goal and a 4th down conversion and all that. But I think, if anything, you downgrade the Patriots from last week. So I think this line would have made sense before the playoffs. But in the playoffs, the Patriots have a plus 1.5 EPA net. The Seahawks plus 0.29. All right, translation, Seahawks have been twice as more efficient with, I think, a more difficult schedule, especially last week against the Rams.
Right, exactly. What are you thinking in terms of just like quarterback play? I put the defense first position chart up here, but let's go back to the odds board. Let's start with quarterback. Let's start with general Super Bowl MVP discussion real quick before the passing props. Sam Darnold plus 125, Drake May plus 235. Obviously, those prices are a little bit better than the money line odds for those teams to win outright. Do you see any value on the quarterbacks, or just in general when it comes to Super Bowl MVP, which is a position that quarterback usually takes that award home?
Yeah, I like Sam Darnold. I know it's some people said JSN would have been the MVP of the conference championship game. I disagree. I don't think there are many times a quarterback's going to have no picks, 3 touchdowns, 300 yards, and not get the MVP. So I think the odds are a little bit off there, where the Seahawks are 65% to win the game just by the money line odds, and Sam Darnold's only if he cashes more than 40% of the time, you're profitable. I think it's a little bit closer. It should be a little bit closer in line. So I'd make Sam Darnold like a minus 110 favorite. I think there's value there.
What do you see in terms of like someone who wants to bet both? Can you be profitable in that scenario? Hey, I want to bet Sam Darnold and JSN because I know the Seahawks are going to win. Is there any EV to be had there?
I'm not sure it's better than minus 230, especially because there's the who won the Seahawks' first Super Bowl MVP? It was a linebacker, right? With the pick 6. I think that's always a possibility. So you're probably going to be all right. But if you really like the Seahawks, you could bet minus 230, or shop around and get a better number at an exchange or something. because there's always that black swan event possibility where somebody else gets it.
Or it could
Drew
be
Lock 75-1. I would like to see that scenario.
Right, yeah. Darnold gets hurt on the first drive of the game, and Drew Lock comes in and throws 3 touchdowns. They're still going to give it to the quarterback. Or Kenneth Walker has a huge 200-yard game. We just don't know. Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting thought there. I think that if you want to bet, like you said, I would rather just bet the money line there, or just bet the spread as well. Split those 2 bets up if you really have conviction in the Seahawks here. I don't really have like a really strong take on the spread or the total. As of right now, that is. Do you see any possible line movement with either of these, or do you think these numbers are pretty much set through next Sunday?
Because of where the spread is at, I don't see a lot of line movement. We've seen some 5s pop up, but if it was 5.5 or 4.5, you're not going to get like a big whale off the couch because of that move. It's not going to be 6, and it's not going to be 3. So it's going to be in this Vegas zone, as Bill Simmons dubs it. So I don't see a lot there. I'm kind of surprised the totals tick down from 46.5 to 45.5. I think if anything, the Seahawks defense has been a little disappointing this playoffs, and their offense has been a lot better than expected. So I kind of lean to the over there, and wouldn't be surprised if we saw some money come back and push it back to where it started.
Yeah, 100%. I just want to pull up here. I have the defense versus position rankings for fantasy adjusted points allowed. A lot of different websites have them. I'm using Establish the Run for that, a great fantasy website for DFS and analytics, etc. I just want to kind of pull up as we go through. I know you had some thoughts on Drake May here, Mackenzie, based off the game script that we talked about. Sort of like kind of highlight this as we get into it. Looking at the Seahawks defense, obviously we know they're one of the elite defenses, and when you look at quarterbacks against them, minus 3.6 points per game lower than average compared to a normal defense. Running backs minus 5.2, wide receiver minus 3.8. The only positive you see here is actually for tight ends against the Seahawks, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later as we get to the tight end position. And it's very similar actually for the Patriots, like not as strong in terms of negatives there, but minus 1.9, minus 0.2 for running backs, minus 1.5 for wide receiver. The only positive, again, is with tight ends. So maybe there's some value as well on Seahawks tight ends in this position if you think they're going to need to throw a decent bit here. But I know you
do they adjust for a strength of schedule?
This is adjusted for strength of schedule,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is something where, look, I mean, this is the entire season. I think if we specifically sampled out the Patriots in the early part of the season or Milton Williams only games, you're going to see a lot stronger negative DVP on the running backs there. But it's still somewhat neutral because they were pretty bad at defending the run when him and Spillane were both out. So look, these are just the guide. Like it's not end all be all with betting props. Like Mackenzie said, I think game script plays just as much sometimes, if not more than a factor compared to these defenses versus position rankings overall. But again, just kind of using them as a guide here. I know DraftKings doesn't have everything up, so I want to pull up player props on FanDuel to see if we can get something a little bit better here. I don't know if you see Mackenzie, or I might just have to pull up the odds jam board because I'm having a trouble seeing a lot of just over-under bets specifically on quarterbacks. All I'm seeing here is just like the adjustable number. I'm not actually seeing like an actual menu of over-under props to make. All right, so this is what
it's very telling that they do that. Instead of saying Sam Darnold over 228.5, under 228.5, they'll be like, here you can bet plus 230, plus 102 or 245, because they want you to bet overs in general. If every bettor takes the lazy approach and says this amount of yards more, they're able to hide more big. I look at DraftKings that you do have to scroll past a little bit less positive EV bets to get to the over under. But yeah, that's what I'm looking at right now.
Usually it's there, but on my end, I'm not seeing anything below just like the adjustable line.
Yeah. Scroll to the right. It's like it's after interceptions.
Okay, I'm seeing pass yards. Pass yards. Oh, you know what? They changed up the menu.
They're hiding it.
Yeah, because normally you go to passing props and it's listed all vertically. Oh, okay. See, and that's another thing too, is the way some of these websites display the actual odds. Like you said, I mean, that's already cockroachy, man. That's already sketchy with what they're doing there. So, okay. So I can what I'll do is I'm just going to pull this up real quick because this is what I do when I go through looking for the best lines. And there's a million other websites like this too.
OddsJam is good, though.
I'm just using OddsJam. It doesn't have everything. Obviously, you got to shop around manually sometimes. But let's look at Drake May. And personally, I like to think sometimes, it's not always this way, that Caesars usually has pretty sharp lines for props. So I always try to see like where their median is. Like they're at 225 and a half, minus 114 both ways. If you scroll over here a little bit, you can see DraftKings and FanDuel are also both there. So we'll stick to 225 and a half for now. What are your thoughts on Drake May passing props in this game, Mackenzie?
I lean to his over. There are some Patriots passing props I like more. Wouldn't mind a bet on the over. I am kind of worried he's going to have a lot of dropbacks, but run a lot maybe, or maybe it's just one of those 40-8 games like we saw the last time the Seahawks were in the Super Bowl. Because it goes, I don't think the Patriots are going to be super successful, but I do think they're going to be behind. And the Seahawks in this playoffs, again, Matthew Stafford threw for 350 plus. And Brock Purdy, I know he went under his prop, but he really had 0 yards in the second half because their tight end went out, their backup tight end, not George Kittle, but the other guy. And Christian McCaffrey went out, and they just ran out of bodies, and they just weren't going to do anything offensively. But it was I know this because I had Brock Purdy over, but it was well on track to go over the lower number. I know Drake May's he threw for 80 yards last week, and he threw for under his prop against the Texans. But against the Chargers, who are fairly good defense, number 5 in total defense, he threw for 270. I don't think he like forgot how to play football, or he's super scared of the moment or anything. I think it's just kind of the game script of those games that made him go under. So I kind of like him over, less because I think they're going to be super effective, but more because I think they're going to be down in the game early.
Yeah, I would definitely look at possible pass attempts over for Drake May. Just pulling up this graphic here again from EstablishTheRun.com. Obviously, you look at the recent games for Drake May. 29 against LAC, down to 27 against Houston, down to 21. Obviously, the weather game there in Denver. And then the last 2 games that close the regular season, blowout wins, mind you, against the Jets and the Dolphins, 21 and 18. So you're like, how could the line be 30 and a half here? When you look at the numbers overall, I mean, Patriots top 5 in neutral situation, pass rate over expectation metrics for the season. You look at the last 4 weeks, they're borderline there. They're top 3 in that at 2.1+% over. And then just overall for the season, they're right there in the top 4. So whether you look at neutral situations overall for the entire season, the last month specifically, when they're in these neutral situations, like score within a touchdown or less, they're throwing more than your average football team. And I think what we've seen is that Seahawks have a great defense overall. Like, there's not one specific way where you're like, oh, they're weak here. Throw against them, run against them. They have a great run defense as well. But we've seen the Rams and what they did, and they went extremely pass heavy against this Seahawks defense. Nothing against their corners, their safeties, but I think what we've seen is when you have an electric, talented offense like the Rams, who they're in the same kind of bucket as the Patriots here in terms of their pass rate over expectation metrics. They went extremely pass heavy, and I think in competitive games, like you look at what the Patriots have done, they've gone very pass heavy as well. Before that last kind of 4-game stretch of the season, you see the game against Baltimore, 28-24. Drake made 44 pass attempts and a 4-point win. You look at the New York Giants. They won that game by 2 touchdowns, more than 2 touchdowns, 31 pass attempts. The week before, 6-point win against the Bengals, 35 pass attempts. Before that, 34-31. So we had a 4-game streak, 5 out of 6 games, where we were well clear over this 30.5 pass attempt mark. So I have a pretty strong lean to Drake May over pass attempts for this game, especially when we think about the other side of things where maybe the Patriots can give the Seahawks a little bit of struggle early in the game. Maybe Kenneth Walker continues to be inefficient, not hitting the holes the right way, where we could see a lot of short drives and punts, which is going to put the ball back in Drake May's hands. And the more we have incomplete passes, etc., the more the clock's going to stop, the more we're going to get opportunities for pass attempts, whether it's in a close game or whether it's in a game where the Patriots are trailing, or a combination of both. So I like kind of where your head's at with that. I definitely wouldn't look to bet May passing unders in this game unless you were maybe thinking about like a touchdown under, which those are kind of props I tend to stay away from in general. They're very fluky and hard to predict. Anything else, Mackenzie, like touchdown-wise, like what I mentioned there, like just touchdown props in general? That's usually an area we don't really talk about too much, but is there anything quarterback-wise, touchdown in general, or any other passing ideas you had?
Yeah, so there is a prop that I heard, and I'm just going to give you what I know. I won't give you the source of it, but both quarterbacks to go under their passing yards in the first quarter. Josh McDaniels is, man, he's in his ninth Super Bowl. A lot of 0-0s in his Super Bowl history, with 2 first-time Super Bowl participants, and with coaches that probably are going to want to feel themselves into the game. I do think we get an under in the first quarter, under 7.5, and I do think it's 51.5 for May, 46.5 for Darnold in the first quarter. I think we could get three and outs with some runs in there, and it's not even be close. So you got to shop around for those. They are out there. Again, on DraftKings, you can go over first quarter props. I don't see the first quarter prop under on DraftKings. That's for a reason, because that's probably the value they want you to not see.
Yeah, I hear you on that. Oh, and we're going to dive more in. We're going to do another Super Bowl props, more game prop episode Sunday night. They'll probably be released by Monday morning at the latest, so stay tuned for that as well. bettingpredators.com and betterday.com. Let's go to running backs first before we get into – we'll kind of combine wide receiver, tight ends here. Again, looking at DraftKings odds, I'll pull up the odds jam once we get on more specific bets as well. And actually, let me do that real quick before I forget, because I just want to pull up – we talked about the passing yards for a second. And we can actually see here, like, if we want to bet Drake May over, well, right now, we talked about 225.5. If you have access to Bet Rivers, maybe you can find this 214.5 minus 117 over, even money 219.5, or MGM here has 219.5 and minus 140 over. So make sure to double check and get the best price there.
Yeah.
Because I only foresee
214 and just 9 cents. That's a good deal. Sorry.
100%. And like, maybe Bet Rivers is in your state, but maybe you have other books that are similar to Bet Rivers that you might be able to get a different number on. You could take, hey, I want to bet 3 yards less, but you got to pay minus 140. There's obviously a reason for that, but usually there's 1 or 2 books where you can find a significant. I think this far ahead, at least, you can find some of those edges where maybe Bet Rivers isn't at this 214.5 by next weekend when we're getting closer to kickoff there.
Definitely.
I just want to bring up pass attempts real quick here, because passing attempts is something that I think I got to go through and do my year-end review for myself to see, like, not just what my overall record was, because we are up this year, but specifically, I think personally, if I had to gut guess, like, I think that my most profitable bet this year has been pass attempts for quarterbacks. And it's game script, man. Like, I think my favorite prop to bet, Mackenzie, if I just had to blind bet something every week, is like, give me the biggest spread of the week and give me the favorite quarterback passing props under, right? And I think we've really done well targeting those situations of like 13.5, 14.5, anything like double digits or higher. But in this case, you can inverse it a little bit. Like, hey, the Seahawks are already 4.5-point favorites. I actually think they should be favored a little bit more. Maybe you look at Sam Darnold under his passing attempts. Maybe that's an angle. Yep. And as you see here, even some books already have that. We see a kind of little bit of a flip-flop here. 30.5, you can get minus 140 at MGM. Sam Darnold for under pass attempts at 29.5. You get a little bit of a different number there. I want to look at Drake May overall, because this is what I was talking about earlier. With Caesars, for example, we're seeing slightly juiced over 30.5, but you can bet over 29.5 for a better number, possibly, depending on where you're looking at. Even DraftKings has a 29.5 minus 145. I can't tell you exactly where you draw the limit for some of these in terms of betting one number versus the other versus how much big you have there. But I think as much as I can, I want to try to get the best number / price, even if I'm not betting all. in the same place. So just be sure to shop around there. But let's talk about running backs here for a second. I don't have any best bets on quarterbacks yet, but that is the bet I like most right now is the Drake May over pass attempts. I know Mackenzie leans strong to over passing yards for May as well. I have 4 best bets, Mackenzie, and 3 of them are running backs.
Let's go. We're about to get into the best part of the show right here.
I kind of alluded to it earlier. I think there's a big difference in the Patriots' run defense versus the last 3 months versus the last 3 weeks. And once we saw Milton Williams and Robert Spillane come back, it's made a huge difference. I also think that there's a little bit of like a kind of like the casual better misconception of just how, I don't want to say good, but how efficient Kenneth Walker actually really is. I think the thing you hear constantly in fantasy is like, oh, like can't Zach Charbonnet just go away? And like Kenneth Walker should get 30 touches. He's so electric with the ball in his hands. And look, like if you want to make a highlight reel of Kenneth Walker versus Zach Charbonnet, like it's night and day. Like you want Kenneth Walker's highlight tape. But Zach Charbonnet, he's out for the year, so he's not going to play in this game. But he was much more efficient in terms of hitting the holes when you needed to, being much more efficient in terms of converting inside the 10 carries into first downs, into touchdowns, which is why we saw Kenneth Walker really be more of not just a rotational back, but an in-between the 20s type of back. Like once you get in the red zone, once you get closer to the 10 or closer to the end zone, you're seeing Zach Charbonnet. And it's not just luck that he had so much more touches and touchdowns in that area of the field. And it's because Kenneth Walker often opts for the let me try to juke you instead of getting those 2 or 3 extra yards. So you could see that 10, 15-yard plus gain, or you could see that -3, -4-yard loss. But that's without saying that Kenneth Walker is going to get a lot of touches in this game. What I like Kenneth Walker under 75.5 rushing yards. That's what I gave out earlier this week. Looks like we have some positive movement in that direction. We see at Caesars right now, they're slightly juiced under, but at 74.5. So we already lost a potential yard on that bet. I certainly think it's still bettable. I think that the Patriots run defense is a lot better than the Rams. And when you saw, like, let's just take a look at what Kenneth Walker has done, let's say over the last month or so. Some games with Walker, some games without. Obviously, against San Francisco, I don't even care what happened in that game because anyone was running all over, passing all over the 49ers defense over the last 2 months of the year, except for the Eagles, right? Like the Eagles were just going to play like crap against anybody.
Right. That's why they got rid of their OC.
Yeah, and that's why I want to throw that Eagles game. Oh, the 49ers defense showed so much improvement. I just don't think that's the case. I want to look at the fact that, okay, in 2 regular season games against the Rams, Kenneth Walker, 16 carries, 67 yards. Then in the overtime game in December, 11 carries for 100 yards, right? Then they played the San Francisco 49ers twice. He had 97 and 116. But let's look at the other games here. Carolina in week 17, 15 carries, 51 yards, 3.4 yards per attempt. Very similar line against the Rams in the last game in the conference championship. 19 carries, 62 yards, 3.3 yards per attempt. Even before that Rams overtime game, how about 9 carries for 17 yards against the Colts? 10 carries for 29 yards against the Falcons, 13 for 56 against the Vikings. So we're seeing like there is a big reason why he was not the workhorse monster back that we wanted to see in fantasy. And then we look at what happened in the conference championship. I just want to pull this tab up real quick from PFF. Just offensively, like when I was watching that game, I'm like, man, George Halani is playing a lot of snaps. Like I thought Kenneth Walker was going to be on the field every single down because it's like even though Halani might be a better pass blocker, Halani might be a better receiver, he might run routes better, you figure Kenneth Walker is still going to be on the field for the majority of the game. We really only saw like a 60 to 40% split, 42 overall snaps for Kenneth Walker, 23 snaps for Halani. You look in the passing game, they were on the field for the exact same amount of passing snaps, 17 for Walker, 17 for Halani. It was the rushing
same amount of targets for.
Right, exactly.
Same amount of targets.
And that makes me think, like, with Kenneth Walker, like, yes, we're getting a guy who's going to get probably all the running back carries, but not all the running back touches, not all the running back snaps. God forbid if this game script goes against you and the Seahawks are trailing it all, he might be off the field for a while. So I think there are some scenarios here where early in the game, if it's low scoring, we might get some decent third down, long down and distance, 2-minute drill to end the half. I think you're going to see George Holani on the field for a majority of those snaps, especially this was Holani's first game back off IR in like 2 months. And they just threw him back in. Look, he hadn't played since week 11, and he got his most snaps of the entire season. And I think that's a big tell here for what we expect his role to be versus Walker's. That's a long-winded way of saying that's why I like Kenneth Walker under the rushing yards, because that also is another route to and under in this game, other than just, hey, the Patriots run defense is really good.
I like it a lot. I'll give credit to my buddy Scott Seidenberg. George Holani over receiving yards. He gave it out at 9.5. I'm now seeing 10.5 juiced over. But if he's going to run the same amount of routes, he's essentially having a starting role. He had 27 yards last week. Even if you wanted to do a fun, like little 2-play prop, I don't think you go 0-2 no matter what happens, kind of game script agnostic. I think Kenneth Walker under his 20.5, George Holani over 10.5. If they're throwing a lot, you might split out that way. If they don't need to throw at all, you might split out that way. But I think you're much more likely to go 2-0 if you go under Kenneth Walker receiving yards, over Holani receiving yards. And I'm with you on the rushing yards in general. Again, 19 carries. If he gets 19 carries and goes 3.3 yards per carry like he did last week, he'd be the most successful running against this Patriots defense all playoffs by far. They've had 49 rushing back carries against yards allowed. So that's barely over 2 yards per carry. I don't think that's noise. We have pretty good sample size with their full complement of rush defenders back.
The Patriots also do allow an above average amount of running back receptions and running back targets against them. So teams are opting to throw to the running backs rather than handing off to the running backs. And even though we could see that continued split in the passing down snaps, it doesn't mean Kenneth Walker won't get targets either. Like he's electric with the ball in his hand. So they will throw to him. My biggest gripe with that is, like, if you're the Patriots and you're their defense coordinator, you're on the field playing defense there, like it's a tell. Like when Walker's on the field, like, he's not pass blocking, right? So I think the Rams fumbled a little bit, not realizing that in that last game, where they could have maybe made some more stops, at least a few more that they needed late in the end there, to where the Patriots might not make the mistake with the extra weeks in between, with Mike Vrabel at the helm of that defense. He's got that Super Bowl experience. And that's one area, like, before we move on here to the pass catchers, like, what do you think in terms of that, Mackenzie, like defense-wise, Vrabel, Josh McDaniels, they had the Super Bowl experience. How much does that matter against a 38-year-old Mike McDaniel and a relatively new coaching staff here for Seattle in the big game?
I think you got to factor it in. I mean, a lot of first-time quarterbacks have beaten Josh McDaniels, like Doug Peterson did. Coaches and offensive play callers. So I don't think it's like, all right, there's some situations in sports where I think experience is everything, like NBA playoffs. I generally think you're going to get kicked in the teeth before you excel. You got to, knock at the door before you kick it down. The Super Bowl, I think, is a factor, but it doesn't get me off the Seahawks on the side.
I gotcha. Anything rushing for you, or do you want to move on to the receiving props?
No, let's move on to the receiving props.
All right, sounds good. So we got – well, actually, you know what? I almost passed over my other best bet there. So Kenneth Walker, under 75.5 rushing yards. Yeah, but the thing is, they're running backs, but they were receiving props for the running backs. So, but I almost skipped over one. And to me, I'm interested to see where this line has moved since we gave it out. And this is as of Tuesday when I gave this out, this was my favorite of the group. It's almost too easy. And look, there's no such thing as a too easy prop bet or bet in general to make. Right. But I really like Travion Henderson under 5.5 rushing attempts. It's just simple. Like, we came into the year with such high expectations for Travion Henderson to be the Patriots' starting running back right out of the gates. We saw a big delay in that. We were all pissed off at Vrabel, like, oh, he's giving Terrell Jennings more carries. He's giving Ramondre Stevenson, and Stevenson has all these fumbling issues. But as we've seen over the last month, really, and it's gone more and more in Stevenson's favor, lopsided snap-wise and touch-wise, as we get deeper into the playoffs. Look at last week. Stevenson, 60 snaps overall. Travion Henderson played 4 snaps. And
Tough to get 6 carries and 4 snaps.
It's hard to get 6 carries. And we have a much tougher matchup on tap here than we do. And I know Denver's defense was good, but when you look overall, the Seahawks' run defense is right up there with them. And I just don't see a path, especially as 4.5-point underdogs. The Patriots were favored in that game. Like, that's a game where Travion Henderson is going to get more rushing attempts, and we just haven't seen it. And the fact is, he's a rookie. He's been notably struggling in pass protection, even though that was a strength of his in college, a little bit different at the pro level, and hitting the holes, just like we talked about with the coaches giving more favor to Zach Charbonnet versus Kenneth Walker. We see the same thing where Mondre's the bigger back. They trust him to gain the yards that they need, as opposed to the explosive plays we saw occasionally this season. But as a whole, Travion Henderson has really been inconsistent other than that month in November and early December when Stevenson was hurt. We've seen now in 3 playoff games, 9 carries for 27 yards against the Chargers, and you've seen his snaps and rushing attempts really kind of plummet in that overall 26 snaps in the wild card game, 25 snaps in the divisional playoff round game, and then 4 snaps again. So I don't think it's going to be – I don't know if it's going to be as extreme, but what I do know is in the highest leverage spot of the season, you got the experienced coach like Vrabel, the experienced offensive coordinator. Trust means everything here. And Ramondre has played good. This isn't just of like, oh, what are you doing? You're keeping your most explosive player on the sideline. You know, Ramondre has been explosive in the opportunities that he's gotten over the last couple months and in the playoffs here as well. And you just look at his overall snap count back from week 18, 28, 40, 40, and then 60 overall. And we see the running snaps go up. The passing snaps essentially remain the same. They trust him more as a route runner. They trust him more in short distance running games. And then they also trust him more in pass blocking as well. It's like, what reason do you have at this point to put Travion on the field other than just giving Ramondre a breather? And the reason why Travion got those 12 carries against the Texans is because Mondre missed like almost an entire half with that eye injury. And then once he got back in the game, he stayed in the game. So I don't want to overthink this one. I think we've seen the coaching staff show us over the season that they prefer Ramondre Stevenson. And in the most important game of the season last year, they went all in. And I really don't expect that to change here unless Stevenson gets hurt.
I totally agree. I hadn't considered this pick, to be honest, but 5.5 seems like a wrong number because the number I had been looking at was his rushing over-under, which was 17.5 yards. If he gets 6 attempts, he should get, any running back should be expected to get 18 yards. So it almost seems like a mispriced number. If you have a huge position on under 5.5, yeah, maybe sprinkle over 17.5. He could get 1 or 2 carries and go over that number, and you could easily cash both. And if he gets more than 5.5 attempts, you're probably definitely cashing the 17.5 on the yards.
Yeah, so we've gotten line movement in our favor. So 2 for 2 for our early bet so far. I gave it out at under 5.5 rush attempts at MGM minus 125. MGM here on OddsJam now has minus 155. So we get 30 cents of movement in our favor. I like that a lot. And I agree. Like, I think I looked at the rushing yards and it's like, what do you say? 16.5, 17.5?
17.5. Yeah.
Yeah. Travion is like, he's like a mini Kenneth Walker to me. He has the explosiveness. He can hit the edge, but Seattle isn't a team you hit the edge with success against. You want to get those yards that you need. You want to convert those first downs. You want to protect the football. And Mondre Stevenson hasn't had any fumbling issues in a while. I think that issue is kind of behind him, at least for now. Obviously, that could be a factor again. Like maybe in Mondre, we've seen them even after Mondre's fumbled early in the season, they still put him back in and trust him because he is that bigger back that can get those short yardage gains through the holes, get those smart yards and have that vision. I think Travion has struggled a lot with his vision in the running game other than those big explosive plays. So again, I still think there's value here on the under 5.5, even if you have to pay the minus 150 price. Just given the matchup, given the game script, given the recent trends and usage, that is my second favorite bet. We'll move on to my third best bet. We'll move to receiving here, but we'll stick to receiving here for a second. I'll go to receiving on DraftKings. I like Ramondre Stevenson over his receptions. and I just want to get the right tab pulled up. Receptions over. Gosh, they're really making this hard to find for me.
I know. It reminds me of the Family Guy where he just comes up and says, "Here, just take the money. Do you want to make a bet? No, just take it." It's like they're trying very hard for you not to make bets here. They just want your money.
So let's see. We gave this out over 2.5 receptions at Bet Rivers, minus 137 for Ramondre Stevenson. Let's see where we're at right now. I just want to double check this.
I'm seeing 2.5 for catches.
Yes, 2.5, minus 137 at Bet Rivers. So a little bit of movement in our favor from minus 137 to minus 148. I would recommend getting in on this now because this is one of those overs where if it becomes a popular over or even just an over in general, I think you're going to see more often than not it's going to move more to the over, and you're going to have to pay a heftier price tag on that. The same reasons I brought up. I have the offensive snaps here. I just want to pull up the receiving snaps for Ramondre Stevenson. Let's look at what he has been doing in the passing game since week 17 at New York Jets. 5 targets. Week after that, blowout against Miami. Doesn't need to catch the ball much. Then let's look at the playoffs. 4 targets, 3 catches. Against the Houston Texans, 4 targets, 4 catches. The reason I like this is because the Seahawks actually allowed the most running back receptions in the league all year. And I just expect Ramondre Stevenson to be on the field for these passing snaps as we saw in the split before between him and Henderson. I don't expect him to have much success on the ground, even though I certainly could see him getting upwards of like 15-plus carries in this game. But I do like him as a safety valve here. You look at the receiving yards. He has been explosive in the passing game in certain spots, 55 receiving yards week 17, 75 receiving yards had a big catch in the wildcard game against a good Chargers defense as well. I like that trend here to continue. I think we have to throw this game out of the 2 targets, 0 catches. Like the last game in Denver was all about the weather. And I don't think we're going to see anything close to that. We don't have any weather concerns here. I would look more here at this trend from week 17 through the divisional playoff, 4 straight games of 4+ targets in 3 of those games. He hit the over in this in 3 out of the 4 games. The only game he didn't hit the over was in a blowout win against the Dolphins where he still had 2 catches and was only 1 catch away. So I think they're kind of correlated in terms of the player usage and playing time snap trends. Right. Is Henderson under 5.5 rushing attempts. Conversely, Ramondre Stevenson over 2.5 catches here.
And it coincides with the script we're kind of I kind of said at the beginning, and a lot of these bets coincide with it, which is they're up big and Drake May is going over his pass attempts and they're throwing and Stevenson's getting 80% of the snaps. It's very easy to see him catching a couple balls out of the backfield.
I hadn't thought about those 2 running back props specifically, but they 100% match up with your thoughts on the game script and Seattle possibly covering the spread here and winning by a touchdown or more. Absolutely. Any ideas for you before I get into my final receiving prop for the Super Bowl, Mackenzie, on just receptions, tight ends, receivers, et cetera?
Yeah, my favorite play on the board, and it's moved a little bit since I first saw it at 37.5, but Hunter Henry over 39.5. And like you said it a minute ago, I'm not overcomplicating this. The Seahawks have a great defense that if they have one weakness, it's the tight end position. We saw that last week. I saw that against my 49ers. Jake Tunges, 5 catches for 10 yards before he got hurt in the first half. So backup tight end was on pace for 120 yards versus this team in a game where the Seahawks were dominating. So I see Drake May going to the comfortable area of the field, which is the middle of the field against this defense. Hunter Henry over 39.5 receiving yards. It's still a play. I'd play it up to 43.5.
Yeah, we showed the DVP here. They are bottom of they're inside the top 10 in terms of most tight end targets allowed per game. And we see that with the production here. They are 9th worst in terms of schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed to tight ends this season. The Seahawks are obviously you need that safety valve over the middle, right? Like in the slot, et cetera. And let's just look back here a little bit to what the Patriots did in their last game. Hunter Henry, we talk about like there aren't as many like true slot receivers, wide receivers as there have been in the past. A lot of teams like to rotate their receivers in and out of the slot. And I'll just pull up the conference championship game. I know I said that really don't want to count that as much, but we're just talking about the type of routes that were run, not exactly the production.
Right, because there was no production in the passing game.
Yeah. Right. So, but we still have a 62% slot rate, for Hunter Henry, 2 more slot routes, then Stephon Diggs, who you would think would be their main slot receiver. Demario Douglas, really strictly a slot receiver, still had a lower slot rate. He still ran 5 routes out wide here, where 13 slot routes for Henry versus 1 wide. That makes me like that even more. Still played 7 inline as well, which is he's obviously their main tight end when he's on the field. And I'll just pull up the last game here as well to show this is something for Hunter Henry. He's always at the top. Stephon Diggs, Hunter Henry, Demario Douglas. When you look at his slot rate throughout the season, we've really seen this go up even more over the last month. 62%, 49%, 47%, 62% again. We see a high of 69% here back in week 15. So he's going to be in that short to intermediate area of the field where, hey, you know what? Like, let's try to beat up on this linebacker. Let's try to beat up on this safety because we don't really trust testing their corners as much because the Seahawks have elite corners and the Patriots really don't have any elite receivers. Stephon Diggs a little over the hill, even though technically he still maybe is their best wide receiver. So I do like that a lot. He would be the guy I'd be most comfortable with in terms of betting an over in the receiving game for the New England Patriots. Let's see, 39.5 we talked about. Looks like MGM might have, depending on your state, 37.5 minus 115 for Hunter Henry over.
That will bold prediction. That 37.5 will not be there on game day. So bet that now if you like it like me.
I think that's probably going to be at least 40.5 would be my initial guess.
I think so.
Yeah, right. No, I like that. He's going to be probably a popular DFS play in the showdown slate format, but I think for good reason. I think even Austin Hooper could be a little sneaky there, even though he hasn't played as much. I just want to pull this up real quick. We'll go
going back to your point on the inline percentage, that's a great stat because it's very easy to say, all right, he hasn't had 10 yards or 20 yards in the last 2 games. Yeah, and Drake May is also averaging 120 yards. Like more data, it's always a catch-22 because more data is better than less data, but recent data is better than old data. So year-to-date, that is obvious. He's averaging 45 yards per game. The Seahawks' one weakness is the tight ends. And recent data, yes, he's not getting the yards, but he is getting the usage that projects over this number.
Yeah, and we've seen even looking at Austin Hooper, who sometimes is on the field at the same time as Hunter Henry. Other times he's mostly playing in line. He has a 73% route rate in line versus just a 12%. So we see the clear favorite as a slot receiver in general for Hunter Henry versus Austin Hooper as the more traditional inline tight end, which I still think both areas of the field can work for the Patriots. You know, if I had to bet something on Hooper, I don't think I will, but I would certainly bet the over versus the under for him as well, being just as a second string tight end there.
Don't mind that at all. I mean, what's his Super Bowl MVP odds, Austin Hooper?
I don't know, but
I could see it. No,
that would need to be at least like 50. I feel like 50 to 1 would be a terrible. That would have to be like a 200 to 1 bet.
Yeah, I don't know if you're allowed to put odds as high as that. They would need to be. Maybe is he here on the board? I don't know. Anyway,
he's got to be because I see Elijah. I just got to check.
Yeah, 500 to 1. 500 to 1. I think that's a fair bet. Sprinkle on that.
Okay, I think that's a fair. Not a bet I'd make, but fair.
Yeah,
yeah,
$5 bet.
I kind of want to keep things simple here a little bit. I just want to bet Jackson Smith-Njigba over his receptions. I gave it out over 6.5 catches at minus 122. I just want to pull up to see what the updated numbers are here. I think this is a number that only can go up. I'd be very surprised if it went the other way. It looks at 15 cents in our favor. Still the 6.5. I don't think that number will move, but I think the VIG will go up across the board here. It's another one of those situations where, like, the scheme, like, they put Jackson Smith-Njigba all over the field. Like, okay, I know the Patriots have Christian Gonzalez. He's a really good perimeter defensive back. It doesn't really matter for the way Clint Kubiak schemes up this Seahawks passing game. We look at overall, last year when we still had Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf in town, it was like, okay, we know JSN is purely a slot receiver. We see last week, even just against the Rams, 41%. Still led the team in slot routes, but still was primarily out wide, 54% versus 41%. And we've seen that over the course of the year. Like, his slot percentage overall is not as high as you would think. Use a lot more in the intermediate to deeper parts of the field, but can be deployed in the slot when they need him. We've seen these elevated slot routes looking for like the midpoint of the season on down. All of a sudden we get to week 18 for the conference championship on the line. And then the playoffs goes from 19%, 13%, 40%, 33%, 41%. And that's the area as well where you can beat the Patriots up a little bit through the air. And I think that fits in really well with his route running and his just overall profile as a good slot receiver. When you look overall, obviously Cooper Kupp does run a decent amount of those routes too. So last week against the Rams, 16 slot routes for JSN, 10 slot routes for Cooper Kupp. We've also seen Cooper Kupp's targets go up over the last few weeks in these playoffs. So he's a kind of the secondary guy again that I would look to in terms of like who else besides JSN would I want to bet over? I would say Cooper Kupp, and then maybe to another extent over 2.5. It's obviously pretty pricey here. I think over 3.5 for Kupp at plus 150 could be a decent plus money bet if you want to throw down a little bit, if you want to talk about looking at same game parlays, etc. AJ Barner would be the other area I'd look. And again, we're seeing a pretty hefty price tag, over 2.5 catches for AJ Barner. And again, we looked at the DVP. Patriots don't give up as much tight end projected points, but they are in a similar range here to the Seahawks. 1.4 schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed compared to the average defense. So those are the other areas that I kind of like and are looking at for Seahawks receptions over. And then just looking at what JSN has done in these types of situations, like I think they're just going to continue to lean on him no matter what the matchup is. Like, look, if the Seahawks go up by 20 points, Kenneth Walker rushes for 3 touchdowns, then maybe they don't need to throw JSN the ball very much. Right. But leading into the playoffs, we see 7, 7, 8, 9, and then 6. So we have 4 out of 5 to close the season, 5 out of 7 overall when you include both playoff games. It's interesting, actually, that both games against San Francisco are actually the only 2 games he's gone under in the last month and a half. And that's because they were running all over them.
Yeah, had no middle of the defense without Fred Warner. So everyone was throwing to their tight ends. Everyone was running against us. So I don't think that is a demerit against JSN that he only had 4 targets, 3 catches in that game. They didn't need to. They won by 35 points. Also, the 2022 Rose Bowl must be brought up. His last before this one, 347 yards receiving, still a record in college football.
Yeah, I mean, he could just he puts up monster production. It's just absolutely
he's a prime time player.
Yeah, it's just amazing with what both the combination of just his personal improvement from last year to what Clint Kubiak's done to getting DK Metcalf and Lockett out of the route tree, out of the offense, and just focusing all on him. It's just I definitely didn't see it. I'll tell you that much. But I definitely will be buying high on him in fantasy moving forward in Dynasty and redraft next year as well. He's going to be the number 1 overall pick in a lot of fantasy drafts. Him and Puka Nacua, almost a 1A, 1B situation with Bijan Robinson right now, depending on what scoring format that you're in. But I do like JSN over the catches. Again, you remove the 2 San Francisco games, he has gone over this in 5 straight games, 9+ targets in each of those 5 games. The lowest catch count has been 7. But if you look at the last 3 non-San Francisco games, 8 catches on 13 targets, 9 catches on 12 targets, 10 catches on 12 targets. So we're getting a minimum of 9 catches in those games and 6.5 catches here. I like the over, especially since we think Kenneth Walker could struggle with efficiency on the ground. This might be where a lot of Seattle's points and yardage comes from at the end of the day.
I think even with the Seahawks cover, they might have a lot of success in the air and just a few splash plays. Right. And Kenneth Walker might have 25 attempts for 50 yards and they win 40-20. You know, it follows my script that they're going to have success on offense, even though I think it's going to be over in the fourth quarter. I think there's a chance. There's a chance.
100%. Yeah. And I think there's definitely some good correlation, like you mentioned, too, with some of these picks. I just want to recap real quick. Stevenson, for me, these are my 4 bets that I like. Ramondre Stevenson, over 2.5 receptions. Jackson Smith and Jigba, over 6.5 receptions. Travion Henderson, under 5.5 rush attempts. Kenneth Walker, under 75.5 rushing yards. Mackenzie, remind me, you like Drake May over passing yards, and then Hunter Henry over receiving yards.
Yes, and a non-player prop, but I also like as a best bet first quarter under 7.5, and I'm gonna add in Halani over 10.5 receiving yards. I think there's strong correlation there, or strong trends pointing to that.
I like him as a DFS fantasy sleeper, Halani, for sure, because don't be surprised if the Seahawks get to the 1 yard line and Halani's punching it in versus Kenneth Walker, and he just becomes Zach Charbonnet 2.0.
Right.
Wouldn't be surprised to see that at all. Actually, just want to check that now that we brought that up. What is his touchdown number for Halani?
Give me 20-1. Let's go crazy. It's not going to be that high, though.
Well, plus 475.
22-1. That's first score.
That's her first score.
Yeah.
How about 2 touchdowns at 50-1?
The only Super Bowl before I was in the city to observe it was in Miami, where Terrell Davis was the MVP of the league, and I'm sure all the props were on him. And the fullback, what was his name? Robert Griffith, had 2 touchdowns, 2 1-yard touchdowns, because they didn't expect it. So Clint Kubiak, I'm sure he was watching with interest. His dad was the offensive coordinator of that team. I could see 2 1-yard touchdowns for Halani at 50-1 cash.
Wow, I did not know that last tidbit there. That actually makes me. I'm sure if you shop around, you could probably find better than 50-1 on this, by the way. But maybe first touchdown too. I don't know. Like, I haven't gotten to those like sprinkle fun Super Bowl bets yet. I wanted to get my best player props out of the way. Just to wrap this up, Mackenzie, like for me, I think at the end of the day, if I want to bet like 20 Super Bowl props for fun, I want these 4 bets, right? I want my best bets to at least make up 80% of how much money I'm putting down here. What are your thoughts on balancing bankroll there for all this stuff? Because these Super Bowl cards can get very, very massive at the end of the day, as you know.
Right, because this is the last football we're going to get for a little while till the XFL or whatever comes up, and who cares about that? So you want to separate the fact that you want to keep betting, you want to keep looking at lines, you have fun with it, from the fact that value is a rare commodity, and you're not going to have 20 crazy plus EV bets. I think 80% is a good number. I might even go a little bit higher. I might think you have 4 or 5 bets that you love, that you have 85% of your portfolio on, and then you have a lot of fun money, or mad money, as Jim Cramer likes to say.
I like it. Mad money. Yeah. We'll talk about some more of those long shots here Sunday/Monday when we get back on with Scott. In the meantime, Mackenzie, appreciate your time hopping on here. You can always find actually. I don't know if I say it, we can find you on Twitter with your Twitter account.
My face will be there, and hopefully I'm not going anymore. I think they took that down, but I haven't been able to tweet for my Twitter account. But hey, it's still my account as far as I'm concerned. Follow me at Mackenzie Rivers, and go to betterday.com. I'm also writing articles there almost every day, so you'll hear my voice there.
Make sure to follow Mackenzie, catch his content on betterday.com. He does great power ratings for the NBA, great NBA picks, etc. We'll probably be back on to talk a little more NBA betting in the near future as well. You can find me on Twitter, as always, at Mad Journalist. That's MADD Journalist with 2 Ds. Catch all my content now at bettingpredators.com. A lot of changes to come on our website, with our newsletter, with our podcast feed, etc. But until then, we'll see you back here in a couple days with another Player Prop Super Bowl LX podcast episode. Mackenzie, I'll see you soon, man. Have a good weekend. And I'll